So a little about Bowjinjin and my personal journey so far. My real name is Boris and I'm from the UK, as you probably guessed, and I was born into a Chinese family. Growing up in a Chinese family and in that kind of environment in general was pretty tough. In terms of my standard of living growing up though, I can say that I was well taken care of and I had a pretty decent childhood in terms of material things anyway. What was tough about it was I was given kind of this doctrine from a very young age that I would become a professional in a lucrative industry when I grew up. What was even more confusing was that I was taught violin at the age of 4, and I was introduced into this world of music from a very young age. And kind of aside from this, I was also kind of really artistically expressive and creative. You know, I love to draw, so I used to draw all the time. I used to kind of make stories up, and I always used to be stuck in my own kind of little imagination, and you know, all kinds of things like that. I got into video games when I was very young as well, and I was kind of bought tons and tons of video games to kind of play and lose myself in. But because of this doctrine that I was given, I had to take this side of me and stuff it back inside whenever things got serious. So I kind of always saw myself as this kind of dreamy boy in this academic facade. And so unlike many kids nowadays, I wasn't actually given any hope of being able to be or do whatever I wanted to be or do. So anyway, I got into uni and I chose a major that I really didn't enjoy, and then I came straight out of that into the working world. All of this time I was gripping onto this doctrine that I was given from a young age. It wasn't until a year into my new job at the time that suddenly I just realised that I couldn't do this anymore. Initially, even though I knew that I couldn't carry on, I didn't have the courage to actually follow through on anything. I looked around me and everything in my reality was kind of anchoring me and pulling me down and keeping me where I was. My friends, my relationship at the time, my family, my colleagues, and probably most importantly, my view of myself. This was such a frustrating time. It was like feeling completely and utterly helpless. So I had to identify and kind of focus on one of these things at a time, and then uproot them one by one. It took a whole load of courage, and it was hella scary. Each time it felt like I was conjuring courage and confidence from thin air. I remember after each time I would literally think to myself, I can't believe I just did that. Like, am I crazy? One good example of this was ending my relationship at the time, which was a relationship of 2.5 years. And that was pretty painful, I have to say. And as cliche as it sounds, things like breaking up, they leave kind of these lasting scars that never really completely heal for either person. So these uprootings had to kind of go on for a couple months before I actually worked up the courage to uproot the last thing that I needed to uproot, and that was my job. I eventually found a music course that I was really excited about at the time, and I decided to go ahead and try applying to it. Regardless of how I felt, I figured that I should at least apply and see if I get accepted before I start worrying about, you know, the details and everything. Thankfully, I managed to get through, which is awesome. However, I still had, you know, the details to sort out. There were tuition costs, and I was already in quite a bit of debt from kind of the loans I took out for my first degree. Also, since the course was in London, and I was in the north at the time, I knew that moving down there, my living costs would probably go up quite a lot. This, on top of the money for the tuition, meant that doing this would be a real gamble for me, and I knew that it would be really tough. When I worked up the courage to tell my friends about what I planned to do, some of them actually told me to reconsider. And, after all, I was giving up a stable job with, solid income and venturing off into the unknown. So that was really hard, having to sit through your friends telling you to kind of cool your horses and, think things through, even though you've kind of mentally decided, I'm going to follow through with this. Of course, the toughest thing by far would be having to tell my unsuspecting family. I decided that I would tell them once I got accepted, because that way they'd have less chance of interfering and sabotaging my plan. There was some real resistance from them when I told them, but thankfully it wasn't as bad as I kind of thought it would be. And they kind of quickly acquiesced to my proposition once they kind of saw my resolve. Having said all of this, it's kind of important to note that during this time, my source of strength was kind of internet blogs about personal development and self-help and all of that stuff. And in particular, Steve Pavlina's blog. And Steve gave me a lot of hope and courage during this time. And so I just want to shout out to him and to thank him for all he's done for me. So anyway, eventually, little by little, I managed to quit my job and get onto this course, and my family even decided and offered to kind of sort my accommodation out when I moved down to London, and support me from that end. And up until this day, I'm still really, really grateful that, they're helping me do this. Although, amongst all of the kind of excitement and elation that I was feeling at the time, having started on this new path, and I kind of expected that everything would be smooth sailing from then on, I quickly learned that, this was pretty much only the beginning. From, that point when I started on this journey and up until now, I've worried, I've stressed, and I've pondered, to absolutely no end. I've been distracted, a number of times, costing me kind of my time, money, and my mental well-being, and having to pick myself up after each time and to kind of keep moving forward. I've had to wave bittersweet goodbyes to friends, to habits, to lifestyle, and to kind of old beliefs. I have pretty much had to continuously improve and to adapt every day. I've lived close to being completely broke every day for almost a year now. My emotional state kind of sometimes fluctuates quite a lot. It was actually a lot worse when I started out and I was still getting my footing, but now I've learned to be kind of more emotionally resilient, and I've burnt a lot of bridges. So there has been blood, sweat and tears, and I'm sure that they will continue to be shed as I kind of continue on this path. And of course there are times when I slip back into kind of self-doubt and I start asking myself again, will this all be worth it in the end? The path I'm going down, is there a light at the end of the tunnel? Well, the byproducts of the pain and confusion that I've had to deal with up until now are clarity and self-awareness. My self-awareness has kind of developed to a point where, I'm pretty sure of what I'll be doing for the rest of my life. I've been slowly refining my life purpose and my mission statement, and I'm certain of the message I'm trying to spread. What is that message? Well, it's that each and every one of us, me and you, has within us the power to change fate, our personal fate, and to make the world a better place, should we choose to accept that power and that responsibility. You might not think that you have any power to change anything at all, but that's not true. It's inside of you. It's quiet, but it's in there. All you need to do is to refine and nurture it. You need to learn to trust in yourself above anyone or anything else. Of course, as everything I've told you up until this point indicates, this is not remotely easy to do. You need to reach down deep into yourself, into the deepest, darkest, most vulnerable places in yourself, and get to work in there. When you do this, you will turn away from certain things because they're just too painful to look at. but despite this, you need to do it anyway. These are literally the chains of fate that people live with for most or all of their lives. And I'm telling you that if you don't want to live with them, then you don't have to. Once you're on this path of conscious growth, then you will realize that life is about love, connection, and truth, and also about growth, awareness, and curiosity. What are you capable of? What is your potential? So that's me in a nutshell. And having told you exactly what it took me to kind of get started on this path, the thing I want to get across to you is that it's worth it. And if that still doesn't convince you, then how about this? You've only got one life on this planet. In that one life, what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind? Do you want to leave this reality only having sat around and maybe won a few material awards here and there? Or do you want to say that you went as deep as you possibly could and you contributed as much as your mind and body could handle? Well, if it's the latter, then I want you to know that you're not alone. I'm with you, my brother and sister, and together we'll make a difference. Let's change the world together.